Number 10. Miss Sinister. Miss Sinister is a Sinister clone who was implanted into the body of Claudine Renko via a genetic virus. This virus was Mr. Sinister's failsafe should anything happen to him, which of course it did. He ended up being killed during the events of Messiah Complex. Following his death, however, this failsafe was activated, transforming Claudine Renko into a perfect genetic copy of Mr. Sinister, but female. She also possessed Nathaniel's powers and his twisted personality. Claudine no longer existed, and in her place was Miss Sinister. Miss Sinister wouldn't last forever, and eventually Mr. Sinister would return to the comics, taking her place. Although I do think the idea of female clones of Sinister also existing is just a pretty cool idea, and I still kinda hope we could someday see a version of Miss Sinister brought back in the comics. I'm cool with there being a lot of clones of just Mr. Sinister, but what about some Miss Sinister clones too? That could be cool. All of the Sinisters. Sinister dinosaurs as well. Number 9. Donald Pierce. It's kind of weird really that I think Donald Pierce is attractive, but here we are. Now you know that I'm into the weird Victorian aesthetic of the Hellfire Club. Surprise, surprise. I feel like people that do know me would be not surprised by that at all. And of course I'm generally into that aesthetic, except for when it's being worn by Sebastian Shaw, of course. Sebastian is a brute, and I will never forgive him for what he did to Captain Kate and Lockheed. Blech. Donald Pierce is extremely anti-mutant, but then again, he's also an X-Men villain, and around pretty much half of that group of the X-Men villains are pretty focused on, death to all mutants and that kind of stance. Donald Pierce himself was one of the original members we're introduced to of the Hellfire Club Inner Circle, holding the title initially of White Bishop. He's also part cyborg, which I'm also weirdly fine with. Even robots and, part robots deserve love. Love for cyborgs. This message from Amanda McKnight. Everyone love a robot today. Alright friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more hot villains lists, which as I said, I can do that. There's lots of hot X-Men villains, and I know y'all are gonna be in the comments like, what about this person? So let's do a part 2 and let me know you want that by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister might seem like a weird one to include on this list, but have you seen him lately in the comics? He's a complete A-grade hottie. Something about Mr. Sinister with facial hair, just like rocking a beard, just really does it for me. Also, I love capes, and they're not super easy to pull off, so if you can pull off a cape, I think you deserve a spot on this list, which Mr. Sinister consistently does, so here he is. He's also just a really fun and creative villain, for better or sometimes for worse when it comes to plots. And if there is anything that screams hotness for me, it's creativity. I love creativity. Sure, he might be a mad geneticist, but he's a fun mad geneticist, you know what I mean? Number 7. Lady Mastermind. Mastermind himself is maybe one of the least attractive villains to me. Maybe it's the way that he operates, manipulating people's minds, or maybe it's just his really whiny nature in the original X-Men comics, or the fact that then he really couldn't take no for an answer, constantly attempting to win Scarlet Witch over to no avail. However, his daughter on the other hand, Reagan Wingard, aka Lady Mastermind, is a certified hottie. 1, she's just overall more physically attractive, to me anyways, but 2, she is also less whiny than her dad in general, which I also like. This might possibly be because she is more powerful than him and she doesn't really feel the need to prove how capable she is, so she doesn't get whiny. Of course, it could also be because Mastermind himself has paved the way for his daughter, meaning that her name and her abilities already mean something because of all of her dad has accomplished over time, improving her reputation as a capable villain. So doesn't need to be as whiny. Number 6. Callisto. With or without her tentacles, I'm just a big fan of Callisto. Callisto was at one point leader of the Morlocks and a villain to the X-Men. She kidnapped Angel and tried to make him marry her, not a great look. Fortunately, I think for both of them, that didn't work out, so yay. Honestly, that would be a weird pairing if it had happened and then still existed now. What would that be like in the future? Callisto for a long time has been a recurring enemy of Storm's. However, currently she's turned from being a villain to just being a straight up badass in the comics. She was depowered during M-Day, but still being a mutant took refuge on Krakoa. She now works alongside the Hellfire Trading Company, acting as Emma Frost's, the White Queen's, White Knight. She also recently got her powers restored after fighting and dying in the Crucible ceremony, asking Storm to fill in for Apocalypse as her own personal challenger. Storm and Callisto are pretty much cool now, so Storm actually did this for Callisto as a kindness, if that makes sense. If you're not reading the comics, it maybe doesn't make sense. Kill them not with kindness, but for kindness in this instance. That's what the Crucible's all about. If you want to know more about the Crucible, there's a whole X-Men issue on it from the last series of X-Men that started in 2019. Number 5. Solemn. Solemn is one of the new hotties on the X-Men villain block. That would be fun to imagine, just all these hot X-Men supervillains as neighbors. Sounds like a chaotic good time. Solemn is a mutant of Arakko who, instead of having adamantium bones, possesses adamantium skin. He was one of the sword bearers of Arakko during the Ten of Swords tournament. In fact, he was the one mutant we thought would face off against Wolverine, but in an unexpected turn, Solemn didn't even really fight at all. He was initially set to fight against one of his own because this was Saturnine's tournament and it was gloriously weird. Instead though, Solemn used a favor owed to him by Wolverine from when they both had to venture to hell to get their Muramasa blades to use in said tournament, making Wolverine tap in and fight on his behalf. Solemn is presented as being a smooth talker, master manipulator, and overall tricksy kind of person. Maybe that's why I like him so much? Number 4. Silver Samurai. Is there anything hotter than a well-trained swordsman and disciplined samurai? Silver Samurai has been a long-time enemy and sometimes frenemy of Logan, and is an iconic X-Men villain because of that. Whenever I think of Silver Samurai, or when I have seen him pop up on Krakoa lately, I always go back now in my mind to issue 3 of Wolverine's 1988 series. In that issue we get to see him do some training in nothing but his undies and a mask. Oh, and he's wearing wrist bracers too. Gotta protect your wrists. The other thing I really find attractive about Silver Samurai is that despite being a villain, he still keeps to his own moral code, which is why he sometimes will even end up teaming up with his enemies or his rivals. If something is going on that he too does not agree with, he's willing to team up with even his enemies to put a stop to it. He's not too stubborn. And I like that. Number 3. Madeline Pryor. I mean, y'all know how I feel about Maddie. Madeline Pryor is probably one of my favorite X-Men villains around, especially because you can't help but feel for her if you know her backstory. Often referred to as the Goblin Queen, a lot of what makes Maddie so hot is just her dominant energy. She is a woman who gets what she wants no matter the cost, which has obviously driven her to do some pretty terrible things. The really tragic thing about Maddie though is that at the end of the day she really just wants to be seen and loved and accepted, and it's like everything she does to try and get what she wants almost pushes her further away from happiness. She is the very epitome of the quote, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." She's deadly, dangerous, usually very unhinged, often filled with rage, but also very tragic. What is there not to love here? She's just so complex. I love characters that are complex. If you're a complex character in a comic, you're probably hot to me. Number 2. Selene. There is something so timeless about Selene, the way she is often drawn and even her mannerisms and the way I imagine her voice to sound in the comics. This is probably because, well, she is actually ancient. Something I find very attractive about her is just that, her timelessness, her wisdom. But of course there is also the knowledge that she could drain the life force right out of you, just like that. Selene is an energy vampire who feeds on the life force of others. Her powers pretty much make her instantly a great and deadly villain. An immortal mutant, Selene is also a member of the group known as the Externals, not to be confused with the Eternals. That's a different group. The Externals are an immortal group of mutants who are generally all ancient and are often known for being unstoppable, or at least notoriously hard to kill. Number 1. Mystique. Is anyone surprised that Mystique took our top spot? I know I'm not. For me, it's not even Mystique's outward appearance, whatever she chooses it to be, her standard blue or another version. Mystique is attractive because of her drive. She goes for what she wants and she never gives up. She doesn't usually apologize, and although she's a villain, there are many times she has done things not with malicious intent, but because she thought it was the right thing to do in the end. I love Mystique for so many reasons, but I think the fact that she is a survivor is what I admire the most about her. She often does her own thing for her own reasons and often to ensure her own survival. There is something so powerful and just so cool about that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's also good to think of others and be compassionate. I'm not saying we should all be like Mystique all the time. That would be a lot, but I think there is something admirable in her ability to completely accept herself unapologetically and trust in her own ambitions and her own plans. For me, that's what attracts me to a lot lot of female villains. It's like this rebellion against all the constraints of what it means to be good. It's the anti of what I feel like is expected of me as a woman and just a human in general. And it's fun sometimes to like be the opposite of that, you know? Be good, but then also be bad and be free. Number 10. Danger. I don't know if it's weird that I find danger attractive, but as I said on part 1 of this list, cyborgs, robots, androids, and synthezoids all deserve love too, in my opinion. Danger as a sentient AI may be more than most after how she was treated by Professor X, who basically ignored her sentience so that he could keep using her as a training room for his X-Men. Not cool, Charles. Not cool. Sure, she rose up and attempted to destroy the X-Men in revenge, and was pretty successful at battling them, at least at first, but I also can't help but feel that she was kind of justified in her villainy, especially when it came to her attempts to do harm to the Professor, who also was exiled at the time basically because of all the things that he'd done that had come to light. Number 9. Spiral. Spiral is awesome and hot because, well, she's a badass. She was originally a stunt woman known as Ricochet Rita, who met Longshot and got swept up in a temporal paradox, which was basically what led her to becoming her future self, the same future self who would end up attacking her. Temporal paradox. Her story is also actually kinda sad, considering that her love for Longshot was what ended up getting her imprisoned, and then Longshot's mind was also wiped entirely of her. That's pretty sad. Harsh. Spiral ended up being heavily mentally and physically modified and turned into one of Mojo's loyal goons. Poor Rita. Spiral also just has a lot going on, and there is a lot about her that one could love. She's a very experienced and skilled fighter, she's jacked and has multiple arms, so she's really jacked, and she can cast spells via specific movements. However, she typically needs all of her arms to be free in order to be fully able to cast spells, as generally their motion and through dance is how she's able to do so. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more hot X-Men villains, so many, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. All the hot X-Men villains. Number 8. Azazel. Azazel is Nightcrawler's demon mutant daddy, who is considered hot enough by Mystique for her to sleep with, have the child of, and even potentially fall in love with. Romance. Yeah, that's right, in case you didn't know or you forgot, Mystique is also Nightcrawler's birth mom. Azazel claimed to be one of the oldest mutants in existence, and is also at times claimed to be Satan, or at least someone who is once in running to become Satan. He and his kind, mutant demons known as the Neophem, actually found themselves trapped in the Brimstone dimension, the dimension that Kurt Wagner travels through when teleporting with a BAMF. Azazel making babies like Kurt was actually all part of a long con plan to help him escape the Brimstone dimension, as he planned to use his children from Earth to build a sort of gateway out of there. Sort of Earth Kid bridge, I guess. It's kind of what he's trying to do, through sacrificing them. It really depends on what you're into, I suppose, but I know a lot of people find the devil and just demons in general pretty hot, both literally and also literally, I guess. Would we consider that even metaphorically? Not really. They're hot and they're hot. Number 7. Apocalypse. I mean, Apocalypse when it comes to X-Men villains is known for being one of the most unstoppable, and just for that reason we should bow down and worship the hotness of or however we're supposed to say his new Krakoan name. I don't speak Krakoan, but I'm trying. I'm really trying, Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a hottie because of how capable and ruthless he is. He is inevitable, he is often undefeatable, and he is all-powerful. Apocalypse also generally is always operating from the bigger picture perspective. He has big plans, and who doesn't like someone who has that level of ambition? We all would want to rule as the queen by his side, no? But it turns out that that seat is already taken, sadly. But that's okay, Genesis is also another hottie. Another villain hottie. Number 6. Kandra. Like many villains who have come before and after her, I think a big part of Kandra's appeal is power. Why are we attracted to power? Well, because I think along with power comes a certain kind or level of confidence. At least it appears people who have power are generally confident, whether or not they feel that way. Something about that confidence, power, and dominant energy makes us feel safe, even when we actually might be in peril, because these are villains who might be threatened threatening us. And generally, if you wind up tangoing with Kandra, you'll likely end up in peril at some point. At least that is what happened with Gambit in his miniseries. He and Kandra used to kinda be an item, but that didn't mean much when she felt he had betrayed her, and when Gambit found out what Kandra was really up to and how she'd actually been pitting the Thieves Guild and Assassins Guild of New Orleans against each other for years, basically creating their feud. Number 5. Shinobi Shaw. Shinobi Shaw is the son of Sebastian Shaw. Well, Sebastian Shaw I don't think will ever make my cut for hottest X-Men villains. Sorry, Sebastian. Shinobi is a cutie that I think deserves a spot. Shinobi Shaw didn't really start out as a villain, but seemed to become obsessed with inheriting all his father's power. He believed at one point to have killed Sebastian, and took his seat at the Hellfire Club and all of his connections for himself. During this time, he attempted to recruit Angel and PSYLOCKE as members of the Hellfire Club's inner circle, but he failed. Later on, it was revealed Sebastian Shaw lived, and he returned to kill Shinobi, who was then resurrected, died again taking his own life, and later was resurrected on Krakoa once more. And I think that's it. He isn't really a villain in the current continuity, but that doesn't mean that he can't end up as one again. Although I do like him just being a nice guy. That's also good too. I wish he could just be a nice guy and be a villain. Wait, I feel like you can do that. You can do both. Number 4. Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is one of the baddest of the bad, but hey, I love her, you love her, and you know, we can't help it, because although she can destroy entire planets, she is still ultimately a hottie. And not only that, she represents someone who is identified as being inherently good turning bad, which for some reason makes her more attractive when it comes to her evilness. The Dark Phoenix was initially explained as being Jean Grey, who had bonded with the Phoenix Force, became the Phoenix, and then became corrupted and turned dark. In reality, it was a little more complicated than that. It wasn't really Jean, and it was like the Phoenix made a copy of her, kinda was her. But the major appeal here, let's just ignore all that confusing continuity, does have to do with the basic narrative. Somebody good turning bad. The idea of someone becoming so powerful that they give into that power and kinda become corrupted by it. It's kinda weirdly sexy. I guess because power is kinda sexy? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Number 3. Magneto. Magneto is obviously one of the hottest guys around in comics. The weirdest thing is, I'm not really sure what it is about him that makes him so attractive to so many of us. I mean, I guess Eric Lencher, like so many comic book characters, is very built, so physically there's that. If that's of course what you're into, like I think so many people are. For me, I think the charm of Magneto is just in his seriousness. I would just want to see him smile because he is typically such a strict, serious, and imposing figure. And then I suppose there is also a sense of fairness, and even a kindness to him that I expect many find appealing. Also, he's got great hair. Number 2. Revenant Storm. Revenant Storm was not in fact the real Storm, which is why she ranks only second on this list. However, she is a version of Storm, albeit one that is evil and that exists on the astral plane. We first met Revenant Storm in 2013's Uncanny X-Force issue number 10. Here we also learn that these Revenants that we meet, who appear to be copies of mutant heroes, actually exist for every sapient being on planet Earth. Basically, it turns out that Revenants are like a form of Mumadrai, which are beings who represent the anti-self that must be defeated prior to a person's birth, according to the Shi'ar and their mythos. Why is Revenant Storm so hot? Well, because she's an evil version of freaking Aurora Monroe. Also, that outfit though. Basically, anytime Storm is evil, or anytime Storm isn't evil, I think Storm is hot. That's how it goes. Next time we will have Vampire Storm, Bloodstorm. Number 1. Emma Frost. Emma is admittedly more of a hero now, but for a while before she turned to the side of good and joined the X-Men, she was known as an ally and member of the Hellfire Club, and an X-Men villain. Remember when she swapped bodies with Storm? Yeah, not cool, Emma. And the feud of those two has kind of carried on in the comics even today. Although in Krakoa both women are of course trying to move forward, and even have worked together as members and allies of the Marauders. Emma Frost is sexy, I think, because of how confident she is. At least that's what's really made me come around to falling in love with her. She is smart, confident, and really doesn't worry too much about what others think of her. Also, all those Hellfire Gala outfits, like damn! Emma was the best dressed at the Hellfire Gala. If you don't agree with me, we're gonna have to fight. Number 10. Kitty Pryde and Star-Lord. This is one of those relationships where there was really no reason for these two to be together. Really. It's just so random. Star-Lord is cosmic, Kitty is an X-Men. I'm not saying the X-Men never go to space. because they definitely do go to space a lot, but it seems like these two only got together because they happened to meet one another in space once, then they began a long distance relationship, from there things got more serious, and eventually ended up with Kitty joining the Guardians, accepting Star-Lord's marriage proposal, but later deciding her and Peter just weren't meant to be because, well, he couldn't prioritize their relationship while also ruling Spartax. Which I get it, when you're ruling a world, it's probably hard to have a relationship, but I don't know, maybe like let your partner like help you with it? I don't know. Me trying to give relationship advice to superheroes. Number 9. Bishop and Deathbird. I mean, this was mostly just a weird relationship. What do these two characters have in common? Not much. Their relationship was pretty much constantly strained because they rarely ever agreed with anything, and also because Bishop is a hero and Deathbird is a villain, they would even fight against one another during the course of their relationship. Overall, it just seems odd that they tried so hard to make this work when it was obviously never going to. The one thing I will say that was cool that came out of these two being together is that there's an alternate reality where they actually stay together and they have a daughter, Aaliyah Bishop, who is pretty cool, unique, cosmic based, and overall is a badass character. So yeah, I like her. So there's a bit of a silver lining here, as with most weird, but not all weird couples. At least we got a silver lining, so that's nice. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show it by clicking like, subscribing, commenting, doing all the things. Also, if you love X-Men as much as I love X-Men, we got a playlist for that, so check it out. Number 8. Cyclops and Emma Frost. So actually, over the course of working on this channel, I have come to love and respect the relationship between Cyclops and Emma. I think I actually, over time, have just come to love and respect Emma more as a character. It's like the more I read about her and get to know her, the more I love her. Remember way back when I started on this channel and I said I could only imagine Cyclops with Jean? Nah, those days are gone. I have changed since then. But what is weird about these two together is when Emma kind of cosplayed as Jean and then had an affair with Cyclops in his mind. That was a pretty strange moment in their relationship, made only more weird by Jean psychically walking in on them. Like, imagine walking in on your partner to find them cheating on you with someone who is dressed up just like you. That would be an experience, right? Especially if you walked in on them in their mind. It's a lot. Although I'd also be like, why are you in my mind? This is an invasion of my mind privacy. Number 7. Bloke and his unnamed boyfriend. Well, there are lots of people that come to mind when we first talk about Marvel's first gay relationships and intimate moments in the comics. The very first gay kiss, I believe, came actually in 2001, but it's a little disappointing. Bloke is a new member of the X-Force who just happens to be gay. We meet him first in issue 117 of X-Force, and in issue 118 we get to see him with his boyfriend, but in the same issue he also ends up dead. So, making it pretty weird that this is where Marvel chose to introduce a gay couple. I guess for some this might be seen as kind of cool because there wasn't really any showboating with Bloke's sexual identity. He was gay, but then he didn't make a big deal out of it, and it wasn't made a big deal out of in the comic. But on the other hand, introducing a gay character only to kill him shortly after revealing that he's gay, that's kind of a weird choice. However, you do have to give credit to Peter Milligan for even putting this in the comic and then for continuously showcasing gay characters in his work. So this wouldn't be the last gay couple that we'd see in X-Force, and likely actually pave the way for making those more long-lasting characters and relationships in comics possible. So it's weird, but it's also not weird. You know what I mean? Number 6. Storm and Quicksilver. Say what? When did this happen? Or more importantly, where did this happen? This is a relationship that comes to us from the universe of Earth 295, also referred to as the Age of Apocalypse. Storm and Quicksilver might sound like the weirdest couple ever on paper, but you have to remember that both characters were different in this universe. Quicksilver was much less of a brat here, as in Age of Apocalypse he lost his sister quite early on, and this was also a much more apocalyptic type reality, which meant more was demanded of him. Storm was still her badass self though. I don't think there's a reality that exists where Storm is not a badass. Number 5. Rogue and Sentry. This one is only half of an X couple, but it's so bizarre I had to bring it up, so you're welcome. Back when Sentry was retconned into existence, it was also heavily implied that he was Rogue's first. And all because he was the only one who could touch her. I have so many questions. And I also feel like we need to stop putting Rogue in relationships with people simply because they can touch her. Physical intimacy does not a relationship make. I know that it's probably been hard for Rogue not being able to touch those that she loves, but that shouldn't mean that she falls in love with someone just because she can touch them and they can touch her, right? Which is definitely what is implied happened here when the subject is brought up during Sentry's funeral and she runs off in tears. Poor Rogue. For so many reasons, poor Rogue. Number 4, Husk and Angel. Husk and Angel are a couple that I have a lot of feelings about. The weirdest part of this relationship that most people point to is the age difference and the difference in experience between the two. Warren is a full-on adult and one of the original X-Men members. In other words, he's older. Whereas Husk is a teenager. I think she was like just 19 or 18, so technically an adult but still pretty young. Still a teenager, so like an adult but a teenager. Young adult. There's also the fact that Husk was this weird rebound for Angel where he claimed he was going to love her forever, but it didn't really last past Chuck Austin's run and has never really come up since, I don't think. He had just gotten out of a lengthy relationship with Betsy Braddock, who was going by PSYLOCKE at the time. It was just an awkward relationship, and if you don't believe me, take a look at the time Husk and Angel made up after an argument by getting intimate in the sky above Paige's mom and the X-Men. Yikes. That was a thing that happened. Number 3, Stacy X and Angel. And if you thought Paige and Warren were weird, I have one that's even a little bit weirder perhaps. Stacy X is a mutant who can affect the way you feel, making you nauseous, dizzy, or even really good, using pheromones. She worked for a time at a brothel using her mutant powers. That brothel got attacked by an anti-mutant group and burnt to the ground, so Stacy X reluctantly at first decided to join up with the X-Men, who would help to confront the group that targeted her workplace. She ended up developing a pretty epic crush on Angel, to the point that although she knew he was already taken, she sent him a video of her jumping rope naked. This never really led to a full-on relationship, but it's so wild I had to include it. Also, apparently this is a thing that people do. People on Twitter told me this is a thing that people do. I'm not sure if I fully believe it, but apparently it happens. Also, I love Stacy X, but she is so weird. Like, who sends someone a video of them jumping rope naked? This is a real thing? This is a real thing? What's happening with the world? What are we doing with our lives? Stacy X must have some amazing inner confidence and self-esteem, and anyone that's done that to send those videos. I love that. I love that confidence, I will say. Love yourself, love your body, jump rope naked, I don't know. What are the takeaways from this list? Number 2, Madeline Pryor and Cyclops. I mean, I have to talk about this one. I have to talk about it. I don't have a choice. Madeline Pryor is the clone of Jean Grey created by Mr. Sinister so that he could engineer the perfect mutant offspring, or just the perfect mutant if you will, after Jean's apparent death. Cyclops would meet Maddie and fall in love with her because, well, she reminded him of Jean, probably, although for some reason no one ever thought this was super suspicious or weird, that she was a one-for-one copy of Jean. Just a coincidence, they thought. Nothing to worry about, they thought. Well, turns out it was something to worry about when Jean Grey reappeared after Scott and Maddie had their first child together and were married, and Cyclops decided to leave his family to go adventuring with his fellow mutants once more. This ended up driving Maddie crazy, unlocking her true psionic potential and causing her to make a deal with demons. Because that's what happens when someone leaves you. She would go on to have an affair with Scott's brother Havoc and become a frightening mutant-based supervillain. So, not your typical fairy tale ending for these two. Number 1, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And if you want to get into more awful stuff from the universe from whence this relationship came, be sure to check out Worst Things from the Marvel Ultimate Universe. That's a series of videos we did, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happened. I got a lot more things to share with you. Yes, on the Earth of 1610, also known as the Ultimate Reality, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were a couple. And yes, they were still brother and sister. And it could be possible in this reality that Wolverine, who saw them getting intimate together, was even their father. It was probably still Magneto though, but it definitely doesn't make any of this better. It doesn't make it better. I mean, I don't know what you could do to make this relationship better. Either just don't have it happen at all, or have these two not be brother and sister. Or at least make it so they didn't know that they were brother and sister and this was some kind of awful, twisted mistake. That might help, but no, they knew. They were into it. People joked about it, and then it was confirmed as being a thing in the Ultimate Comics. On behalf of 1610, I'm very sorry about that. Number 10. Rogue and Iceman. One of the relationships that just didn't seem to work for many readers was the forced comic book relationship between Rogue and Iceman, which seemed to be inspired by the Fox X-Men films where the two were together. I'll admit that watching the movies I personally did not mind it, but of course in my heart of hearts Rogue and Gambit will always win out the day when it comes to both Rogue and Gambit's one true love and romance being each other. So it was very strange when the comics came to echo the films by trying to make Rogue and Iceman a thing. Because while in the movies Gambit might not be around to steal Rogue's heart, in the comics he still very much existed. Like, a lot. But instead it seemed that the Ultimate Universe had other plans that more followed in line with the Fox film franchise ships. After absorbing Gambit's powers and killing him, she ended up being able to touch people without hurting them, and so Rogue decided to touch Bobby. Because I guess that's what you do. Number 9. Richter and Wolfsbane. So admittedly these two weren't really so much a problem together, it was more when they had split up and then Richter was with his close friend and recent lover Shatterstar that things got kinda weird. Although they also had a kind of weirdness that was really well written and allowed us to tackle a bunch of different real world issues within the world of the X Factor series. So it was a good kind of weird really. It was a good kind of weird, but it was still weird. Reign intended to rejoin X Factor after leaving the X-Men and X-Force behind, only to find out that Richter is now with Shatterstar. And to be clear, I don't think Reign actually wanted to leave the X-Force, more she kinda got like kicked out of the X-Force. Sad. Reign returning was immensely offended by Richter having moved on, and by his gay relationship with Shatterstar. Reign actually claims that the child that she's pregnant with is Richter's, hoping to undo his gayness and win him back. The child was not Richter's of course, but was actually Harim Ari's, who had given up his life to save both Reign's and the life of their child. Eventually Richter finds out the truth about this, but in an amazing turn of events decides to still support Reign, despite the fact that she lied to him. And the two actually end up having a great heart-to-heart about just everything that's happened between them. Reign would even later team up with Shatterstar to defeat a demon following this ordeal. Like I said, it's weird, but it's good weird. Cause I also love that like part of the resolution is like, let's team up together and fight a demon. Yeah, that's bonding. Me and my ex's partner. I think it's so cute. Two exes coming together to be friends. Yes. Number 8. Everyone? Everyone in a relationship with everyone. Welcome to Krakoa. A more unconventional, I suppose, kind of weirdness is going on right now in Krakoa that has got a lot of people talking. People are talking about this all the time in comments online. They're like, what is going on? With this melting pot of all the X-Men and mutant history being mixed together, it seems like all relationships are kind of existing at once in a way on Krakoa right now. Relationships are not as clearly defined here. Many characters seem to be weaving in and out of multiple relationships almost seamlessly, as though we are kind of welcoming in an age of polyamory, which I guess makes sense considering one of the guiding laws or principles on Krakoa is to make more mutants. How do you do that? Well, when a mutant and another mutant fall in love. An example of this is what we are seeing in the summer house, where everyone has their own room, but you may have noticed that Wolverine is also bunkering down with the Summers. Jean's room in the house is actually situated between both Wolverine and Cyclops's, and both Logan and Scott also seem to be getting along better than ever, as though the love triangle has evolved to some kind of thruple, which I'm super into, I gotta be honest. But yeah, you should definitely check out these blueprints, because you can see it. It's like Jean and then like Wolverine and Cyclops on either end of her rooms. And of course this is only one of many different examples that are out there in the comics right now. I personally find it refreshing to see these types of less mainstream but very much real world sorts of relationships getting some love in literature, and especially with very mainstream publishers like Marvel, because yeah, I feel like we don't see that as often. So is it weird really, or is it just great? I want to say it's just great. That's my opinion. But you can let me know your opinion in the comments, because that's also, I like other people's opinions, whether or not they match my own. Let's all share opinions and be friends. You know what I mean? Number 7. PYRO and Jean Grey. In issue 9 of Marauders, this ship happens between St. John Allardyce's PYRO and Jean Grey's Marvel Girl. Of course, no need to panic about how or why this happened, as in actuality, it's not real. I'm not sure if it was PYRO himself who came up with the idea of Jean and him being shipped in this telepathic illusion, or if it was Emma, but I feel like since Emma Frost's the one creating it for Yellow Jacket with the help of the Stepford Cuckoos, it's likely that she is the one who decided to ship the two together. I also see her being like, who do I want to ship Pyro with? Jean, because I hate Jean. No, I don't know. They love each other now. They hate each other. I don't know what's going on. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list as much as I am loving bringing it to you, please be sure to reciprocate the love by giving this video a thumbs up. And I'm sending love back out to you right now, so thank you for doing that. Number 6. Cypher and Bay. Technically both of these two are mutants, but their relationship developed kind of suddenly, which is what makes it so weird and also so great. Once again though, this is another kind of charming and endearing weird relationship. Really, I just love weird things, I think, so I think many of them are charming and endearing to me. Most of them are. These two met during the Otherworld tournament in the Ten of Swords event, and their challenge where they faced off against each other was to get married? If you like me love weird stuff, by the way, and if you haven't checked out Ten of Swords yet, you need to do that. It is so amazingly weird. You gotta read it, it's so good. Both Cypher and Bay did end up following through with this challenge, both gaining points for their team. And since then, this arranged marriage between the Krakoan mutant and a Rocco mutant has stuck. Hey, if it works, it works. Number 5. Magic and the Death Commandos. So this is less of a full-blown relationship and more of a weird tactical move of Magic's in combat, but it caught me so off guard and made me laugh so hard when I read it that I thought I needed to share it with you, so here we go. Also, anything that allows me to celebrate the awesome mutant series we have going on currently makes me really happy, so I'm happy to bring it to you. New Mutants being one of those series. Here, Magic and the team are facing off against Sybil and the Shi'ar Death Commandos, a group of hired muscle basically. At one point, Magic confronts the team of Death Commandos in issue number 5 of the newest New Mutants run, volume 4, that started in 2019. She asks them if any of them want to make out, and when they reveal that they either aren't interested or they're too busy working to accept her offer, she tells them they made the wrong choice. Apparently, if they had agreed, then Magic would have been cool defeating them with love, but in this case, they'll be dealing with Magic and her soul sword instead. Yeah, they definitely made a bad choice. And fortunately, none of them happen to be human, which means that Magic doesn't have to worry about not killing them as per Krakoa's rules. Some very bad news for the Death Commandos. Number 4. Angel and PSYLOCKE. These two had some super intense weirdness show up in their relationship, and it all went down when Angel as Archangel became the new Apocalypse. PSYLOCKE was his love at the time, and against her will he managed to brainwash her into becoming his bride, despite the fact that he was already with Pestilence, who was also his baby mama. He was like, I'm with you, Pestilence, but I feel like I need another bride, you know what I mean? All the brides gather round, says Angel. You might think, well hey, that's pretty awful and weird, but guess what? It only gets weirder. PSYLOCKE was freed of Archangel's / New Apocalypse's control and attempted to appeal to him, to make him remember the goodness inside of him and revert him back to the hero he was. However, when this failed, she was forced to kill him. Angel, however, didn't die permanently though, but instead was resurrected into a new version of himself, becoming Angel once more. This new version of Angel was a complete refresh of the character, with all of Warren's past memories being lost to him, including the memories about him and PSYLOCKE being in a relationship. His appearance was also back to his original look, except for some reason he still had his techno-organic wings. Because I guess techno-organic wings are way cooler than organic wings, but you know what's not cool? His and PSYLOCKE's relationship, I suppose. Because they cut that part. Number 3. Mystique and Gambit. More of a moment in the comics than a full-blown couple, but still these two together were a weird time. Especially considering that Gambit is often seen as the true love of Rogue, and Mystique is, of course, Rogue's mother. Adoptive mother, but all the same. Already we got a super weird scene where a mutant student of Gambit's, known as Fox, approached him in the showers attempting to seduce him. Gambit manages, though it seems just barely, to resist her charms, and this is already awkward enough as this is a student-teacher relationship, so but it's made even weirder when we later learn that Mystique had actually infiltrated the Xavier school under the guise of Fox, who was never really a true student as this was just a disguise devised by Mystique. Mystique later claims to have done this in an attempt to protect her daughter against Gambit, whom she didn't think was good enough for her daughter, but I gotta be honest, trying to seduce your daughter's partner seems like a really weird way at attempting to protect them. No wonder Rogue is always getting mad at her adoptive mama Mystique for meddling. She's like, this is weird, Mystique, don't meddle this way. This is not a normal mom thing, stop it. Number 2. Nightcrawler and Amanda Sefton. So this is a weird one, because before Amanda Sefton was known as Amanda Sefton, she was Jermaine Zardos, the daughter of Nightcrawler, admittedly his adopted sister, as Nightcrawler of course was not born into the Zardos family, but was merely taken in and raised by them. But still, it's pretty weird, they're still siblings. Even weirder, Jermaine had apparently always been in love with her brother, but when he was accused of murdering their other brother, Stefan, Jermaine refused to accept that Kurt had done so in cold blood and sought him out to find out what was really going on. In truth, Kurt had actually killed Stefan, but only because Stefan had, at an earlier time, made Kurt promise to do so if he ever became too dangerous, which was what happened. Jermaine disguised herself as Amanda and did her best to make sure no one would recognize her, not even her brother Kurt, who grew up with her. This plan miraculously worked, and Amanda began to investigate and also date her brother. Oh my. What's going on? Number 1. Juggernaut and She-Hulk. Juggernaut isn't a mutant, and is usually more often thought of as an X-Men villain, but he has also teamed up with the X-Men from time to time, even sometimes seeing eye to eye with his stepbrother Charles Xavier, though usually that's not the case. She-Hulk, however, is not a member of the X-Men, nor has she ever been, and is not a mutant, but she is an acclaimed hero, which is one of the things that makes this relationship so weird. Well, that and the fact that it was a super random hookup. It all went down in Uncanny X-Men issue number 435 when She-Hulk was representing Juggernaut in the court of law. The ship was considered so abhorrent that years later, She-Hulk actually denied that it ever happened. In the 2005 She-Hulk series in issue 21, it was claimed that an alternate version of She-Hulk from Earth 721, who had been on vacation and impersonating her 616 counterpart, was actually the one who did the deed. And She-Hulk stands by that to this day. She's like, it wasn't me, it was an alternate version of me, I would never do that. But people are like, what's the real story, She-Hulk? What really happened? I believe her. I believe She-Hulk. She would admit to it if she did it. That's what I think.